Mitra. Today we get to talk about the good old inner critic that we all have and how to, we're going to call it befriend it, and how to harness it, how to harness our inner critic to become better versions of ourselves and to learn and to grow. So to start off, let's clarify, what do we mean by the inner critic?
What I mean is that voice, unhelpful voice, that keeps telling me that I'm not good, I can't do it, I don't know it, it's a fraud. And I said not useful, but I don't really mean it not useful. In a sense, it is useful sometimes. It's like exactly like worrying, which this creates actually. So let's say I have a presentation and the inner critic says, I don't think you can do it. I don't think you're good enough. I don't think you're prepared. I don't think you know what you're talking about. Well, if I listen to that, and when you said befriending it, that's probably what we mean. If I listen to that, maybe I need to be more prepared. Maybe there is something that I could do or a state that I can get into, like service, to do a better job. So that part may be correct. But when it goes beyond that and it keeps going on and it keeps repeating itself, no matter how I'm progressing, no matter how well I have tried, it just goes on, then it becomes that not useful, negative voice that we call inner critic. What do you mean when you say inner critic?
For me, we're using the term inner critic. It doesn't quite encapsulate how I experience it. For me, the inner critic is basically any voice within me that makes me feel less than, lower energy, makes me feel bad in any way, right? It could be the voice that says, what's the point? Why even try? You're going to fail anyways. So it's not really a critical voice in that situation. Or
Put down.
I have the voice that says, nobody likes me, right? And it's really interesting when I observe it. It takes two forms. Sometimes the voice it talks to me in second person, like you're nobody, or you're not going to be able to do this, or there's no point in you doing this. This is the you. And other times it's takes the form of I, the first person. I I don't have the energy to do this, or what's the point of me doing this, or nobody ever respects me the way I want them to, right? So it takes the form of I. For me, when we say inner critic, it's it's all of those voices. It's anything that just makes me feel bad.
So if we look at this, I mean, inner critic probably is a psychological term, but my world is the energetic world. If I look at it energetically, basically these voices, and you're right, there's more than one. And when you turns into I, that means they have come really close, meaning they've taken over your own connection with yourself. They're no longer a second party; they're the first party. But for me, it's really when we are in the energy of fear as opposed to love, then those voices become very much our experiences and they get a chance to speak. These voices probably are needed somehow for our survival mode, for our survival of being here. And when they come, they've done their job. I have survived. I'm completely safe physically. And they go overboard and they start interfering in my thriving life. I want to get into a relationship. I want to feel better. I want to be in service. I want to connect. I want to love. And then it comes in and does inappropriately. And I mean inappropriately because these voices were not meant to be in the uh, sphere of thriving. These voices are great for surviving, but detrimental to all thriving. That's why they are intrusive, because they're going to a place that it's inappropriate and they are not needed. That's how I see these voices as inner critic. Otherwise, if I'm crossing the road and the voice says, stop, I need that. Because the job of these voices, and we sort of mentioned it when we were chatting before, to separate us. And for survival, I need to separate myself. I need to know that this is me and that's a car and that is you. Otherwise, I run into you or I run into a car. So separation is the job of this voice, which is great for survival and horrible for thriving.
Yeah, I like how you simplified that, where it's either a voice of that's based in fear or in love. And that really that encapsulates it for me as well. Let's delve a little bit deeper into this um, protective aspect, this protective element that this inner critic serves for us. In your observation, where is it coming from? Where is this inner critic coming from? And what's motivating it at its core? And why did it go wrong?
These are like, each of them is a book that can be written. But let's just in essence say they came from, if you look at it again, energetically, not scientifically and not psychologically. But in essence, in my view, it came from the fact that we forgot that we are one. We really believed that we are not united and there's different people and you are you and I am me and we are separated. And from separation immediately comes protection. Because if you're not one of me, then I need to protect myself from you. And hence these voices are needed for that space, for that belief. And then since we really got separated, I mean, if you look at it from gender point of view, from race point of view, from religion point of view, professionally, look wise, the color of hair, we have really almost skillfully as human beings have found so many ways to separate ourselves from each other and make it us and you and them. And then when that happens, in essence, I need to protect myself because there are so many people that are not me and are against me. So I have to protect myself. So the world that we have created that is actually disintegrating as we speak in 2025, that world, the necessity for that world is this separation. So that when the separation happens, then the problem is it happens everywhere. Now I am not only separated from you, but I also am separated from me. And hence the voice that keeps talking that, it just has learned to do that. But that voice, funny enough, when enemy becomes friend, that voice also can pretend that it's protecting me from you. See, it was an illusionary separation to begin with. And now we need the illusionary protection so that I am safe from you, the imaginary enemy that my frightened mind has made up. So there was a lot of force and a lot of reason for those voices. And those voices, as you said, and I agree with you, there's not just one voice. There's so many, I call them characters. There's so many characters in us, all of them pretending they are for us. I'm doing this so you can progress. I'm doing this so that Ben won't harm you. I'm doing this so that you actually get motivated and do more work. I'm doing this so that you can grow. But none of these voices are sustainably can be there for our growth and for our progress because fear can never ever bring love and connection and true transformation.
That was a big for me in my personal growth journey, understanding that these voices were not me and that they're actually part of my protection mechanism. That was a huge paradigm shift for me. I was able to get distance, and not only get distance, but then start to have a little bit more compassion for those voices within me. Because I did go through a phase where I was told that these voices that are self-critical within my head are not me. But then I went through a phase where they became kind of my enemy, where it was like these voices are bad. I labeled them as bad, and my stance was to try and shut them out, tell them to shut up and be quiet and try and distract myself from them, as opposed to, oh, you're actually trying to protect me. That's interesting. Oh, I want to get to know you a little bit more. How are you protecting me? How do you think that you're protecting me? And huge paradigm shift for me that was really helpful. So when we're talking about now befriending this inner critic, let's open that up, because I remember the first time I heard something like that, I'm like, what are you talking about? Why would I befriend this voice in me that is seemingly wants me to suffer? What are your thoughts on what I just shared?
I completely understand what you're saying, and that is true, because when we treat an enemy with the fear and combative energy, we have actually added to that energy. That's a very interesting. So I have bought into its philosophy. It is saying that this, we are separated. There are enemies. I need to protect you from this. And now I'm saying I need to protect myself from you. So we are continuing, energetically speaking, this combative, separated enemy kind of interaction. But when I say, okay, I see that you may mean well, I don't know, but okay, I'll hear you. But I hear you with a sense of balance, and as an observer. I'm not against you. I am not for you, because these are the two extremes. And I'm glad you brought it up. These are the two extremes that I have witnessed people go, or myself go. Either really we buy into it, say, yeah, Ben did this and did that too. Yeah, I think so. You're right. We completely buy into this, traumatic and dramatic version of life that my inner critic tells me, or I go against it and now I won't listen to it at all. And my survival might not be, that healthy. So when we take a space, we become an observer of it, what we call befriending, meaning you're not my enemy, because opposite of enemy is friend. I now can benefit if it has anything of use to say, at minimum. And at best, what I can see is, oh my God, how frightened and how misguided my inner world is. And that's so beautiful to see. But I'm saying it with the gentleness. I'm not saying, oh God, I can't believe it, ridiculous, because that energy means that I have bought into that energy. But when I see it and I say, oh my God, it's just, I was watching by force the news. I was traveling, so I was exposed to the news. Well, I was sitting there, so the news was there. And just without really wanting to say it out loud, I just started saying, what have we done? What have we done? And the person who was sitting next to me turned to me. He said, are you talking about the news? I said, yes. I had tears in my eyes. My hand was on my heart. And I said, what have we done? Look at the world we have created. So it's just like with that love, and there was truly love in me in that moment, watching the most horrendous things that we have done to each other. It's like that we need to look at the inner critic, because it is that inner critic that when it manifests and becomes an action, allows us to do what we have done. If I don't other you, if I don't say I'm separated from you, I can never harm you. So the inner critic is dangerous, not for ourselves, but also for the way we show up in the world. That's why we need to befriend it. That's why we need to observe it and say thank you for your opinion and your input. I literally say that to my mind. I say it out loud. I say thank you. I heard you. You know, I'll take it into consideration. Your job is done. Thank you so much. And not be against it and not be completely at its mercy.
Yeah, I resonate very much with what you're sharing. And I remember a time when I heard similar words and I was like, yeah, but it's not that easy. I would try to befriend it as they would suggest to me. I would try to talk to it, and it was just too hard. It was over consuming. I just felt when I was feeling down, I just felt down. To try and talk to an inner critic was just seemed like a futile thing. I felt crazy and it felt stupid. What I realized, though, what I've learned is recognizing when I'm enmeshed with the inner critic. There's very little progress that can be made, for me, in my experience, with this inner critic if I'm enmeshed with it. Step one is to get distance and detach from it. And that can be really hard to do. It took me time to do that, but I had developed ways for me to do that. And one of the most powerful ways for me to get distance from my inner critic is slowing down. Now, this sounds super simple, but it's so powerful, and you can apply it to anything. Anything I do really slow. So we've talked about breath work a lot, and I'll do, for example, the box breathing, right? But I'll do it very, very slow. Another thing I might do is I gaze at one thing at a time in my environment, and very gently I observe the details of an object, just slowing things down, not moving my gaze too fast. Or I might have an affirmation. And affirmations have always been a tricky thing for me because they never seem to work. And the reason was because I was fighting against my inner critic. I was using my affirmation to try and shut out the inner critic, and that doesn't work. What did work for me is when I would say an affirmation, but I would say it very, very slow. And as I was saying it, I would observe all of the tension and the resistance within me. The inner critic wants to fight, resist, and whatnot, but I would just continue to say the affirmation slowly without wanting to shut it out. It's so key. It's so key just to allow it to kick and scream. It's okay. And the slowness gives distance from it. I'm curious to hear, what are your thoughts on what I just shared? And is there anything else you would add to that?
No, I think you're right. To me, the first step is correctly identification of the issue, but and the tool you provided is great. Slowing down, pausing, because without the pause, you wouldn't even know that you're one with it. And the sign to know that you're one with it is that when you are in a very unstable and difficult place emotionally, most of the time, that's when you know you've listened to it too much and you're enmeshed with it. The result is that you don't feel settled. You don't feel, even in good times. I mean, you see people in like wonderful, positive events, and they all seem to me energetically, they're in trouble, as if like, there's something wrong. So when you find yourself in trouble, most of the time energetically, that means you've become one with it. So first step is absolutely using those tools and identifying that you are enmeshed and completely at the mercy of your frightened mind or inner critic, as we called it in this program. And the second step is to really know that you do have a choice. And you're right, Ben, it is difficult. But I always say it's more difficult to continue the way we have lived. This life that we have created is not sustainable. And that's why we're going through all the things that we're going through personally, professionally, and globally, because we have made our life unsustainable this way. So the alternative is more difficult. This is unfamiliar, and I'm particular about these words that we use. It is unfamiliar, but it's not very difficult. It is just very unfamiliar. We have never done that. I've never said, okay, I'm really feeling bad right now. I have a lot of inner critic voices saying, like, you're not good enough. You shouldn't speak. You shouldn't participate. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't be with these people or with this person. And I just want to see if there is another way, if there is some other way that I can find. I know I have a choice. I've never exercised that choice, but I want to explore that choice. And these are the times of exploration. I keep going in and going out because this is not the only thing that is happening. This is one of the things that are happening that we're exploring. But these are the times of change and transformation, not just for a better job and finding a better partner, but also new ways of being with ourselves, first and foremost. So the second step is to understand there are other choices and trust that you will know what that is. Because we always say, like, what is it? What is it? Give me. It's like, no, just know there is, and then you will know how it comes and you will recognize it when it comes. So that's the second one. And the third one is that when you find yourself, because it's a habit, I call it an addiction. We are almost addicted to this way of being, which is the way of fear, the way of separation, the way of difficult. We make everything difficult. It doesn't need to be this difficult. So the third step would be to, when you find yourself going back towards the way you always been, and find this new way as an anchor. And you're right, it could be something as simple as taking a break, taking a breath, pausing. That's where the wise statement of sleeping on it came from, because we knew when we didn't create that space and we did something, it usually would be from fear, not from a wiser, loving self. So you create that space and you create that as an anchor, the choice that you've created. And the choice could be just a little bit different than this, because going from being completely at the mercy of the inner critic to befriending it and lovingly inviting it to dinner and say, how are you? Please tell me what you have come to tell me, which is something that I suggest people do. It might be too much. It might be too much of a transformation that after a lifetime of being the other way might not be doable. So what we do is we take the next step. What would the next step? Instead of answering you or listening to my inner critic, I'm going to just create, as what you said, a pause, or I'm going to write down, which is very helpful. What are the alternatives? Are there different other ways that I can do it? So start very, very small. And when you find yourself going back to the habitual robotic way of being with yourself and your inner critic, you can really notice that and go back to that as an anchor, just like meditation, that you go back to what is the best way. And that best way changes in this moment, might be very different for me than like half an hour from now. But what is the other way is the great question to ask. Just one way that is a little bit easier than this. What if you weren't my enemy? What if I was able to do it? What if I just don't believe you, my inner critic? What if I don't believe you? What if I think you're here to really overstay your job? Your job is done. I'm safe. I'm sitting in my room. I feel quite safe. I don't think I really need your services right now. Just doubting it, talking to it.
Yeah, it's being doubting it or skeptical, being some healthy skepticism about what it has to say. Yeah, and what I hear you saying really is it's about opening up to curiosity,
Yes.
bringing in the energy of curiosity into the process. I want to add also, in my personal experience, is being curious about where it came from. What are you really wanting from me? You know, we had talked about this in one of our previous episodes. You look in the mirror and you have a conversation with some part of you or that is resisting or fighting. I tend to journal where I literally have with this part of me that might be kicking and screaming or just feeling sad about something, having a conversation with it and learning about it. Once I have the distance, the key is to get the distance first from it. Once I have the distance, journaling, talking to it, where are you coming from? Or what do you really want from me? Where is that coming from? And it's incredible the insights and the clarity that can come from that. And how I then realized that What it's really wanting from me is to feel safe, and it's confused. It's often a misperception. I am confusing this person's behavior as being threatening. And when I really look at it, I'm able to see that it's not threatening at all. And the process of inquiry and the process of curiosity reveals that. It reveals that there is nothing to ever fear. And so the inner critic, instead of being told to be quiet or put to the side, it just relaxes. It almost dissolves, at least temporarily in that moment, until the next thing comes up and re-triggers it.
Yes. I think just turning our accepting or telling into asking. I think that's what we're talking about. That when you ask it, your statement about curiosity, really curiosity, the indication of curiosity is asking. Tell me. Tell me, I see that you're kicking and screaming. I see that you're very, very loud. I see that you're nonstop. You just are going. Can you tell me more? And the moment you do that, it's like everything else that when you pay attention to it, it settles like a child that is going out of control. And you say, okay, honey, come and sit here. Tell me what's going on. And the child settles down. In a way, that aspect of us also is seeking attention, seeking our attention. And we're saying, okay, I'm going to give you attention, but this is a healthy attention. It's a very healthy attention.
With
I want to
distance,
know.
an attention with distance. Yeah.
Intentional attention. I know why I'm asking. I'm not asking because I've already bought into what you're saying. I'm asking because it's open-ended and I really want to know more. And in that knowing more, a few things happen. First of all, I may learn something that I didn't pay attention to. There may be some point that I need to attend to. And it, whatever it is, that voice, that energy settles down, understands that there is a parent in the house.
And it might not, by the way. Sometimes it does. Sometimes just sitting down and being curious alleviates it and quiets it. And other times it doesn't. And gentleness is so key. It's so important that we're gentle with ourselves and we realize that we are breaking patterns and habits that we've carried for a lifetime. And so recognizing that and giving ourselves permission to work through the process without trying to get to a solution, without trying to fix anything. It's so important because otherwise it defeats itself and it doesn't serve us. When I think realistically about my own journey and how I went through this, creating space was important. I might sit with myself. I won't get clarity, but there's a trust that eventually clarity will come. And if I'm not getting it, or if it's actually re-triggering things within me, which is very likely, by the way, when we start to get curious about things that have been in the shadows of our psyche for so long, sometimes it's like opening Pandora's box, right? And things start coming up and you're like, whoa, where did this come from? And so taking pauses throughout that process and allowing it to unfold and unravel, I think is really important, and giving it space. Maybe journaling and then not thinking about it too much for the days that follow, and then coming back to it when you're feeling a little bit less charged or when you're coming at it from a fresh perspective. So we have alluded to the fact that there's a wisdom in the inner critic and
Potential wisdom.
potential wisdom. I realize that this can sound confusing, right? How can a part of us that is traumatized and wounded offer us wisdom? And I'd like to clarify that for our listeners. What do we mean when we say that our inner critic can offer us wisdom?
I can only tell you what I mean. What I mean by that is this, that originally, before we arrived at this frightened, fearful state that we're in, this voice was necessary as a consultant, as a wise advisor, before it was turned into this frightened, always criticizing, putting us down voice. So originally it was meant to do that. And when we look for its wisdom, we're really using it for what it was intended to be. That's what I mean personally for wisdom, because there were supposed to be different aspects of me advising me. But for whatever reasons, they have now turned into unhealthy protectors, unhealthy criticizers, and judgments that are not necessary. So when we let go of the fluff, there exists in the bottom of this, in the heart of this actually, something that is quite wise. This voice was supposed to be there to say, just like when we consult with a good friend. That's just how we make a decision. Like I call you and I say, Ben, I want to do this. What do you think? And if I trust you and if you have care for me, you will give me angles that I probably haven't thought about. Or you may have access to wisdom or knowledge that I don't have access to. So they're meant to do that, these voices. But now, just like a friend that is not a friend anymore, now it has turned into, I can't believe you're doing this. You're no good. You think you're doing it. You don't have it. You're bad. So that voice, that friend, is now enemy in the clothes of the friend. That's the problem. And when you look for the wisdom, you're looking for the friend within the enemy.
I like that. Yeah, and I'll just add to that there's so much wisdom that comes through the process of learning how to be gentle with ourselves, learning the power of curiosity, and the process of slowing down. There's so much wisdom that comes from these things that we learned when dealing with the inner critic and transcending it. Yeah.
So true. And the process of, I would add to that, the process of hearing something and not completely buying into it and not completely going against it. That process itself has wisdom in it. I can contain things without being either against them or consumed by them. That process is very useful in many other areas of life and many other aspects of life. So you're right. There's so much to be gained from this so-called negative voices in our head. And that's how we are becoming really alchemists, that we can turn all of these not so useful, not so good things and voices into something very useful and eventually into love and wisdom.
So what would you say, Mitra, are the key points from this episode that our listeners can really focus on and take away?
Well, I think everyone, and I would love to ask them actually that question, what did you take away from this? How do you work with your voices? But what was of importance to me was to really understand that these voices exist. We all have them because sometimes we suffer in silence and in our private space. Know that we can work with them. Know that we have other choices. We don't need to be against them and we don't need to be consumed by them. There are other choices. And there was a need for it originally. That's why they were created. And if we go back to that original purpose that it was intended to be for, then we can actually benefit from it. And we can work with it. We always have the ability and the choice to benefit from that which has been harmful to us and for us.
Well, thank you so much, Mitra. This was a good conversation. Lots of wisdom contained in it. And we hope you, the listener, were able to receive a lot of value from this. And we'd love to hear from you. So if you have any comments or questions for us, don't hesitate to leave feedback for us in the comments section. Until next time, bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, We thank you.